it would be much nicer if we could just snap our fingers like Q and have a pad appear in front of us generated by our comm badge, and we could just do whatever we wanted on it. You know, and then when we didn't need it, just delete it. Don't need it, delete it. Which is what you should do with the first 3 seasons of the show. And season 1 of Picard. Don't need it, delete it. Species 10C. I think we just saw them. Maybe. They seem just like a cloud of smoke. Are they the same people that left behind those giant bones last episode? Or did the giant bones belong to their ancient ancestors? Sometimes we're not meant to know all the answers. I don't want all the answers. Sometimes, although it may not seem logical, having the answer is not so good a feeling as having the question. Am I right? This was episode, what is this, 12, 11, I don't know, of season 4 of Discovery. Species 10C it's called. Not a very creative name, but it's on the ball, it's on the point, and it's giving us a great descriptor of what this episode is about. The core of this episode is about first contact. Finally, it feels like in a sensible season, this episode would have been maybe the 3rd or 4th episode in the season. Because this episode, the one before it, and maybe a few at the beginning, were the only episodes that really felt like they had a point, like we were getting something done. Man, there was a lot of slow episodes in this season. But as I said before, slow nothing is better than a bad something, if that makes sense. This episode was pretty good. I watched it, and I enjoyed it, and I said, no. I have to sleep on this. And I did, and then I woke up, and I watched it another 2 times, and what was unique about this episode is that on repeat viewings, I never found myself pressing that skip button. I was kind of actually a little bit invested in what was happening. Crazy, I know. So I said to myself, this feels like a 7. And I said, no way. I slept on it, and I'm not going to be revealing my review score here, obviously. You're going to have to watch till the end, or just cheat and skip ahead. Which is what you should do when you're watching the season. My review score is pretty good, but we'll find out about that. Actually, now that I mentioned skipping ahead, I feel like with this season, if you didn't watch the first 3 seasons, don't bother. You may get some enjoyment from the season if you watch like maybe 4 episodes from the season. You can cut out a lot of it, and you might have a good time if you just watch a few at the beginning and like the last 2. I mean, your mileage may vary, as I often say, but I'm kind of having more fun with these last few episodes because we're discovering things. You know, the show is called Discovery. Maybe we could discover something, you know, for real. Discovering things, going where no one's gone before, and tackling big problems, you know. That's what Star Trek's all about. That's what I do every day. And I'm glad to see we're kind of doing it in Star Trek Discovery. Very late, but we're doing it. Why does it feel like every time there's a new show, the first season, the writers are just doing whatever they want to do? They're doing probably ideas that they had before for a different project that never came to pass, and then they're forcibly metastasizing those bad ideas that never worked before into the new show that they have to work on, which is Star Trek, which you know is going to end up on television. It's not going to get canned because of the name recognition. So they're migrating these bad ideas into it, they finish it up with the first season. It's terrible, obviously. And then we slowly have the show return to what the fans were looking for. Why is that? I mean, imagine the hubris, right? I'm going to write this show however I feel like writing it. Oh well, nobody liked it. Whoops. But I need to save face and pretend it was great, while slowly here and there making little changes here and there, not too many, not too fast, to bring it back to what the fans originally wanted. Where have we seen this before, right? Picard did a complete 180. I mean, it's totally different than season 1 so far. I'm not saying it's necessarily going to be good, but it seems totally different than season 1. And season 4 of Discovery, a little bit better than season 3, better than season 2, better than season 1. Not as much of a change as Picard experienced from season 1 to season 2, but we're definitely moving in a better direction. It feels more natural for the character who gets the most sway on things to be the captain, does it not? Even if you don't like Michael Burnham, does it not make sense for her to be the captain if she always gets the final say on everything and always decides everything anyway? I spent 3 seasons utterly confused as to why she always seemed to dictate what was happening in the show, even though she wasn't the captain. Now she is, so I guess that's an improvement. Anyway, without further ado, let's dig down into Species 10C. What is this episode? As you know, basically every TV show now is just one big movie that they chop apart. So we're now on Discovery Season 4, Episode 1, Part 10 or 11, whatever it is, if you catch my drift. We're approaching the hyper field, I guess. I don't know what these names... Listen, if you're the type of person who needs to understand, have a good concrete understanding of the spatial geometry of a scene, and you need that, you might not be satisfied by this episode. I felt that they're doing a poor job of getting the scale right. You know what I mean? We're trying to show objects that are immense in size. As they mentioned, the hyperfield 1.5 AUs, astronomical unit, which is the distance between Earth, if you're familiar with that world, to its host star. Very large objects. And I didn't feel that we're properly getting it across. I felt myself asking, where are we in relation to this thing we're talking about? What do you mean by orb? What do you mean by hyperfield? What do you mean by the surface of this thing? Why does it look the way it does? Last episode, we took the time to show a Dyson ring, which is essentially an artificial ring orbiting a sun that absorbs 100% of the sun's energy. It could be 100%, maybe less. I don't know. But at an efficiency far outstripping that of ground-based solar panels and other such photovoltaics. When this episode started, I thought we were going to that ring, and I looked at the hyperfield surface, and it had some kind of like graphical design on it, and I'm just confused. What am I looking at? I didn't quite understand it. It didn't destroy the episode, but maybe I'm stupid, right? And maybe it made sense to you if you saw this, where they were in relation to the hyperfield and this orb and the aliens. I'm just gonna end it there. So, as you know, Book's ship is cloaked and attached to Discovery, and when we left off last time, it appeared as though we had Jet Reno hostage on Book's ship. Tarka and Book are on the ship trying to throw a wrench into Michael's plans to contact the 10C peacefully, and also Ndoye is a co-conspirator with them. That's where we left off, and that's where we're starting off in this episode. We've approached the surface of the hyperfield. I go ahead and look at it. I'm not sure why it looks the way it does, but it is very mysterious, so bravo. I like mysterious alien things, as you know. Discovery being what it is and all that. I mean the concept of Discovery, not the ship. And we're setting up these dots. I mean, we've already learned that we need hydrocarbons, which is a very plentiful molecular structure on worlds that I'm familiar with. They're pretty much everywhere. It would have been cool if they came up with a different term. Maybe call them xenohydrates or something like that. Just something else. Hydrocarbons are everywhere. If they come down to any kind of terrestrial planet, would they be confused by what they were smelling because there's hydrocarbons everywhere? It really begs the question. They're setting up these dots are like drones, like they're little droids or something, like you would see in some kids show, and they're still hanging around 3 seasons later. I cannot stand them. We're loading them up with hydrocarbons to try to give them the message of peace. So we've formulated a hydrocarbon structure that denotes peace in their mind. Okay, so we're using that as a message to say we're coming in peace and we're not going to hurt you. These dots, Adira is pressing buttons on them, getting them ready to throw them out of the ship with their hydrocarbon compounds on board. And that I will notice that this is a great example of how to figure out how they're filming this behind the scenes. If you look at Adira, she's just going like this, pressing random things in the air, mind you, because we have holographic displays now, which suck. And we had better looking holographic displays hundreds and hundreds of years ago in Star Trek. And she's just launching them. And if you look at her hands, it really appears as though her hand is moving in a random way. And I wonder if they're telling these actors, just move your hand in a random way. And then in post, we'll go put in the holographic display so that it fits the things you're pressing as you're pressing them, even though it looks random. Is that what's going on here? That's kind of sad, isn't it? Because presumably we're telling these dots all to do the exact same thing. And you can see her press different buttons on each one. Go back and look at it if you can. If you can't tell, I'm not a big fan of these holographic display things. I just find it's visually confusing, ugly, and I just don't like seeing it in every single shot. It's also archaic. Why is it that it's semi-transparent, translucent, and not totally opaque? We've had the technology for a long time to do perfectly hard holographic objects with maximum opacity that you can't see through, so you don't go blind when you're looking at it. You would go blind if you were trying to use these holograms to do work. Think about it. It would be much nicer if we could just snap our fingers like Q and have a pad appear in front of us generated by our comm badge, and we could just do whatever we wanted on it. And then when we didn't need it, just delete it. Don't need it, delete it. Which is what you should do with the first 3 seasons of the show. On season 1 of Picard. Don't need it, delete it. And if the dots weren't bad enough already, we're humanizing them again, and they make these little cute sounds, robot whirring sounds. Like we just watched another different sci-fi program or film with humanized robots, even though they're a robot, right? They're like a little diminutive robot who doesn't need to be humanized. Who is this show for? 10-year-olds? You wouldn't see that in Prodigy. The hyperfield absorbs them and then promptly absorbs Discovery in a very cool looking effect. It looks like this strange sentient waterfall kind of spews out of the surface of the hyperfield and just kind of sucks up Discovery and creates a vacuole inside the hyperfield, kind of like a gigantic cell, right? If you know cellular biology, and Discovery is now existing in an orb floating inside the hyperfield. So we're in their airlock is the way I understand it. I need to put it in terms that I can better understand to understand what's at stake and the tension and the geometry of the scene. I see it as Discovery basically being in their airlock, and maybe you can take it that way too if it helps. So what's going on now? Well, we're starting the first contact procedure, and I think everyone is doing their job well. The president her performance is good. Dr. Harai's performance is good. And just when you think somebody else is about to come up with a good idea, and you think Michael's going to get the assist, he just swoops in and steals the goal. On 3 different occasions in this episode, I think. And that was really letting it down. Would it kill you to just let another character come up with a good idea? I mean, they're giving her the building blocks, and then Michael just steals the goal. And it just keeps happening. I don't... Like, she's already the captain. Like, what do we need? Do we really need more? How much is enough for Michael? How much is enough? How much is enough for these writers? Can we just let Michael just be the captain? It's fine. She gets the final say, of course, because she's the captain, but she doesn't have to invent every good idea. She comes up with the idea of giving them Boronite as a gift, which is what they were stealing from our galaxy when they were leaving the destruction of the DMA in their wake. What they were mining, we'll say. And then she also takes the first step onto the alien pod, and then she also comes up with the idea of sending them the mathematical equation for air. And it's just, why does she... 3 goals in 1 episode. Come on, guys. Enough is enough. Like, we've got all these characters. Let them do something. There's a reason why nobody can remember the names of these other characters. And I have to really work to do it. You know, like Awashikun, Bryce, Christopher, Reese, Nielsen, Detmer. Like, did you know those names? Did you know those people? Be honest. Did you know who they were? Could you name them off the top of your head? Be honest. That's all I ask. All I ask is that the writers give them something to do. Maybe season 5 will get that. Many such examples that I can't get into here. So, as I said before, we're offering them Boronite. We're offering them all these hydrocarbons. We're trying to communicate with them. What can they say? What can we say? What can we do to make it look like we're not a threat and we need to talk? Offering them a gift, as you would in first contact between warp-capable civilizations. That's good. We're saying peace. We're saying curiosity, things like that. We're saying sadness. Again, hydrocarbon compounds correspond to certain emotions, as we've seen in the last episode. They're talking to us. We're trying to understand it. With the help of our whole bridge crew, we devise a framework, a bridge language between ours and theirs, to determine how to say things like if, and, but, yes, no, greater than, less than, various mathematical equations, and emotions. So we're taking emotions and math, and we're bridging the gap. Kind of an interesting prospect, isn't it? We're taking the purely logical and the purely emotional, and we're trying to match them together like an interesting puzzle. I don't know if the writers actually were thinking about that, but it's something I thought about. And it kind of presented an interesting question in this story, in that we have characters like Tarina and Michael, who is ostensibly a citizen of Navarre, bringing forth ideas of pure logic, when we have aliens that are bringing forth ideas based on pure physical emotion. And how do those two ideas correlate to each other? How do you take one and fill in the holes in one with the other to create a whole picture, you know? It's an interesting jigsaw puzzle, and I don't know if that's something I caught on to and the writers didn't really know, and it was just an accident. I suspect it was, but it's kind of cool either way, and I think forms the core of the philosophical question of this episode if you read into it enough. A few useless discovery scenes occur, where one between Paul and Hugh, and then one between Michael and Saru, where they just discuss their feelings, and we don't need these scenes. This episode is fine without them. Do we need hour-long episodes of Discovery? I'm starting to wonder, because we don't have enough content for an hour. I mean, I think maybe this should be a half-hour-long show. Pathetic as it is, maybe we don't need interjections of emotional dialogue full of sound and fury signifying nothing every episode over and over again, just bringing down the review score. That's all they're doing, if we're honest with ourselves. Tarka made one mistake. As smart as he is, in the heat of the moment, and when the chips are down, he had the tactical oversight of taking Reno hostage, who was an engineer on Discovery, and leaving her in the back of the bridge area where she can see what Tarka's doing. Tarka is working on mathematical equations and whatnot to determine how they're going to move forward in removing the power source for the hyperfield. Reno sees what's going on. Let's just let that marinate in our brains for later. Meanwhile, Ndoye has agreed, frighteningly, to go forth entering the access codes for Discovery's systems that she was given by Tarka. Ndoye is essentially overriding safety protocols and systems on Discovery in order to allow the ejection of plasma from one of the nacelles to rip a hole in the hyperfield so that Book's ship can escape. Very scary when you're in such a precarious situation with an immensely powerful alien race and you're trying to make first contact. Very thrilling, very dramatic, and I really felt it. A pod, a amorphous-looking silver pod descends upon the shuttle bay of Discovery, allowing access for our characters into it, which it has a breathable atmosphere, and the 10C is using this as like a special carriage to take the envoy from our galaxy into their domain so they can better connect. Hopefully in a linguistic way. You will note that the president of the Federation took the first step and said that she was going into that scary looking alien pod. She said, "I will go," and she said it first. Big props. I didn't like this character very much originally, but I see what they're going for, and I wish she had more agency in the plot. Actually, I think she gets overridden by Michael a little bit too much. I liked her in this. She took the first step. Imagine, if you will, moving into a mysterious alien pod of mysterious origin to be taken somewhere, possibly to your death, on a whim that you can talk to them in a language you don't know to convince them to not kill your species. You don't hold all the cards here, as I think they say in this episode. And that was bold. They're boldly going. We just boldly went. Interesting, isn't it? To finally boldly go somewhere where no one has gone before. So Michael, Saru, Tarina, and the president go onto this mysterious orb, and you'll note that the surface alters in order to show an access door that looks exactly like the ones on Discovery and sounds exactly like it. And you'll note that none of the characters seem to point this out. None of the characters seem interested at all that the door looks like something that they built. It looks like a terrestrial style starship door. And none of them say anything. And I wonder if we're just getting the wires crossed in development here, where the special effects were finished after the script and they didn't have time to do a reshoot to have the characters react to the fact that they gave us a door that we understand. You know what I mean? Like, you'd think one of the characters would be like, wow, it looks just like a door on the Discovery. But they didn't, because the special effects came later. When you're watching a puppet show, you don't want to see the strings, right? And I think I just saw the strings. So that kind of took me out of it. Maybe it won't take you out of it. It didn't really affect the story. So we're just going to move on. And they're mysteriously taken to an exact copy of the Discovery Bridge. We've seen this before on Star Trek. Not that that's an excuse, but it's an interesting use, again, of a bridge we built years ago to represent all number of different ships, this time representing a bizarre, hard 3D space inside what I presume is a alien gas cloud of unknown size and makeup, where we have a discussion with the 10C. Using math, using emotions, they present us mysteriously with a model of the isolytic weapon that Tarka used originally to destroy the first DMA. And we communicate to them that we feel sad that they're attacking. And they show that they're curious and they're also sad. So if we believe this tenuous dialogue based on nothing, and if we believe Michael's summary of the events, we know that they have empathy. So they're not totally villains. Maybe. If we just take it at face value, we've learned they have empathy. However, remember that Andoye and Tarka are enacting their plan to breach a hole in the hyperfield. Hyperfield? The orb? I'm not so sure. All we know is that Book Ship needs to escape the field that's surrounding them, that the 10C put around them. And they do. And the 10C obviously react to this as a threat. And they transport, as if by magic or remote control, our characters back onto their shuttle bay of the Discovery. And, 10C are now being attacked by us. Really jamming up the works. What are they supposed to think? We're trying to send a peaceful delegation, and then we're attacking? If I didn't know better, I'd say that the first contact just failed. I would say, based on all logic, that they're done, that we're dead. But, not to sound too much like Reno in this episode, I think all hope is lost. Unless they really pull a rabbit out of their hat, we're done. We're donezo. By the way, Reno had a few great scenes in this episode. I mean, we were robbed of Reno for this entire season, and then Reno returns in full force, and I think this character is really growing on me. This character has grown out of that silly, angry, unregulated phase that we've seen in season 2 and 3. The outbursts and the silly dialogue. A lot more on point, a lot more on the level in this episode. Sharing a few great scenes with Book, Tarka, and on their ship. And I will say that in terms of the performances, what we saw in Book's ship from Tarka, Reno, and Book, I mean, as I just said, they're really acting circles around what was going on the Discovery. I think I was a lot more emotionally invested in what was happening on Book's ship, which is par for the course for this season. And Reno was a good fit here, being held captive by Tarka, and just the mental connection she had with Tarka, knowing how smart they both were, and knowing there was no possible dialogue they could share with each other where they could convince each other of their idea. There was nothing that could be said. You know, what you're doing is going to get us all killed. And then Tarka just says, we have 30 minutes. Like, we're done. Reno and Tarka are done. Like, there is no more dialogue they can have. And I really felt that. Just the sincere boredom with death that we're experiencing on Book's ship. And Book is the only character with any kind of emotional zeal here. Not because Tarka and Reno are boring, but because they're already over the hill with regards to what they're trying to achieve. And Reno did contact the Discovery by asking for a piece of licorice, and then abusing the fact that licorice is electrically conductive when you chew it, to fix a communicator chip that she had somehow had the time to sneak into her uniform while she was captured by Tarka. That was a little weird. I would have came up with something different, like when Tarka basically comes to blows essentially with Book and traps Book in his own ship, essentially in a stasis field, a force field jail, the brig kind of on the bridge. I would have said maybe Book had some kind of way to hack the ship to get a communication through. But Tarka is so smart, right? And we need to write around it. Tarka was smart enough to basically entirely commandeer Book's ship. Tarka had installed so many defensive mechanisms to benefit him and not Book that Tarka had the run of things. Okay, this is, for all intents and purposes, this is Tarka's ship now, so we should stop calling it Book's ship. Maybe this is the last we're going to see of it. Maybe it will be destroyed. Reno tells Book that, hey, he's lying to you. Tarka's lying. I looked at the equations. There's something wrong here. When he removes that power source from this hyperfield, it's going to destroy everything, including the 10C and us. And it's going to actually destroy Earth. It's going to leave a subspace wake that will destroy so much of what we hold dear. And Reno just lays it out on the line and says, listen, I'm going to roll my flag up the pole and see who salutes, and if you don't salute, we're friggin' dead. And Book salutes, and Book has now turned on Tarka, and sadly, I like the character of Tarka, but now Tarka, he's beyond the pale. Tarka is now, he's vulnerable, he's fallible, and now he's gone into the realm of villainy, because he has stolen Tarka's ship, he's stolen Book's ship, and now we're doing the unthinkable. We're actually attacking the 10C. We're getting the power source at all costs. Tarka is willing to destroy countless lives, to destroy First Contact, to destroy Discovery, to destroy Michael, who was in love with Book, and vice versa. Just to go to a home he doesn't even know is really there. So, Tarka, good character. But I think this is where I get off the Tarka train. I think I'm off the Tarka train right now. I'm off the Tarka bus. And what Reno says is true. They do get a message through Discovery saying at the very end, listen, we're going to die. You have to kill us by any means necessary. And Reno, the hero, she's basically telling them, you have to shoot at us. You have to, if you get the tactical advantage, you fire, right? You have to stop us at any cost, because we're going to destroy this. We're going to blow this popsicle stand, and also blow the popsicle stand that is Earth and Navarre and everything else, crippling the Federation. Very sad. So, that's Species 10C. If you couldn't tell, I didn't have that many complaints. A good episode, otherwise, though, let down by a few completely pointless and silly scenes. Just for no reason. We have what we need to make a good episode, but we just can't do it. We can't forget these silly Discovery-style scenes. We just need to let it go. So much improved, but again, one step back. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That defines this episode. A lot happened, and we moved forward a lot, and most importantly, we're in a different place physically and emotionally than we were at the end of the previous episode. Very important. We spend a lot of episodes this season ending up right where we started off, which is a bad idea in a serialized show. That you really don't want that in a serialized show. Musically, I didn't really hear much going on. Definitely could. The soundscape of this episode definitely could have been a bit more rich. I wasn't invested in any of the music, any of the musical motifs. I didn't really hear much going on. Especially when we consider Jeff Russo excels at background music for episodes. His themes, not so much. Visually, kind of cool. I mean, we saw the up close of the hyperfield. Very alien looking. Lots of alien things we saw this episode, right? And that's a big plus for me. Lots of cool alien graphics. That's good. Philosophically, as I said before, the interesting dichotomy between logic and emotion was at the core of this episode, the core in which everything orbited. So philosophically, I'm going to go a yes on this one. Although not extremely compelling, and I only notice it on repeat viewings. Maybe you didn't notice it at all if you did watch it. At the end of the day, I'm going to say this is better than the last episode of Picard, but not as good as the first episode of Picard Season 2. So I'm going to have to go ahead and just give this one a 6. It's good. It's better than nothing. It's kind of fun. If we took this episode and just a few earlier episodes from the season and just watched those alone, I feel like I would have a better overall appreciation for what they were trying to achieve this season. I think I would reevaluate these review scores if I could just cut out half the episodes of this season and look at them holistically. I would think different, but there's a lot of baggage in this season so far still. Again, as I said before, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That was Discovery, Season 4, Species 10C. I wouldn't mind getting a real name for them soon. That would be cool. If there was some way they could express their name using hydrocarbons, math, and some numbers. Stuff like that, Hopefully I expressed my feelings in this episode to you in a linguistic format that you understood. Hopefully I didn't need to do a lot of translation to get my ideas across. I'm Lieutenant Mark, and I'm going to see you again when we do, I think, another 2 day. That means 2 episodes in 1 day. It's not easy, guys, but I'm doing it. Is the next episode of Discovery the last one? I sure hope it is. See you guys next time.